helping you lead a healthier life. This is CURES.
Welcome, everybody, to the CURES Show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlin, happy that you're here. So our wellness depends so much, we know, on eating healthy foods. But how do we know if some of the foods we eat could be making us sick? So today we're diving into the latest research on food sensitivities and how we can find out for sure if we have one. Dr. Artemis Morris is the founder of the Artemis Wellness Center in Milford, in Connecticut. She's a naturopathic doctor who has decades of experience treating people for food intolerances, helping us heal our gut. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
It's always a pleasure, Kara. Thank you.
You know, I've struggled with this. I think a lot of people have, and it is something that can be so confusing. So I want to start here that just if you're having subtle symptoms like headaches, bloating, stomach pains, fatigue, aches in our joints, poor digestion, it could be a food sensitivity. Is that right?
That is correct, and they're very hard to diagnose. They're different from food allergies, and we can talk more about that. And so it makes it harder to diagnose because the symptoms could show up even 3 days after you've consumed the food.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. What is really the difference between a food allergy, which probably most people know if they have, and a sensitivity or an intolerance?
So a food allergy is the one that we think about kids with peanut allergies in particular, where it's an immediate hypersensitivity reaction. Our immune system can mount an anaphylactic reaction. It could be life-threatening. So that's a food allergy, and that's something you go to an allergist for. There are some blood tests we can do for that as well, and that would be a potentially life-threatening condition that you want to, have your EpiPen for.
So if you go to the allergist and they do those little marks on your back and they do things and they wait for you to react, is that just for allergies?
That is just for allergies. It's a IgE, as in Earl, is the IgE is the part of the immune system that mounts that attack against the food component.
Or the grass or the pollen, or when you find out I'm allergic to something really specific and the allergist told you so, that's a little different than a sensitivity.
That's correct. So you can also have environmental food allergies as well as food allergies. So yeah, absolutely. So that's the allergy. Then the food sensitivity is different. It's not life-threatening. So if you have a food sensitivity, then it can be something that's underlying, and all those symptoms you mentioned, digestive issues, fatigue, skin problems, GI, like just discomfort after eating. I've even seen it. I had a patient that had high blood pressure, a young woman, and it turns out it was contributed to by food allergies and sensitivity. So there could be a number of symptoms that are due to sensitivities that are definitely also partly immune system regulated, but also can be gut regulated, which all food allergies and sensitivities are, but it's a delayed reaction.
Okay, so let's just, some of the most common food sensitivities, right? We've got dairy, wheat, gluten, which are grains like wheat, rye, spelt, peanuts and tree nuts, eggs, shellfish, soy, citrus fruits. Those are the most common.
Those are the most common, but you can actually have a food sensitivity, and that's mediated by IgG, as in good, let's say. It's a different part of the immune system. It could be to virtually anything. So I have even found some patients have food sensitivities to, something as delicious and wonderful as garlic. So these are the most common, and these are the ones that when you do an elimination diet, as we do in the Mediterranean Detox Program or the upcoming Heart Health Program, we are eliminating the most common ones, but you can really be sensitive to so many different things and not even know it.
So I'll share a personal story that before I knew anything about this, and back in the early 90s, it was considered healthy. I was just entering the workforce, and it was considered healthy to have a Diet Coke, and I would have a bagel and cream cheese. That was like a common lunch, I'm like, those of us who wanted to be watching our weight or fit, you'd be like, I'm gonna have a fat Diet Coke and fat-free cream cheese, and I was getting headaches almost every day. And I was lucky enough to end up in the office with a DO, a doctor of osteopathy, and he said, I need to put you on an elimination diet because a lot of people have food sensitivities they don't realize. And this was probably like, not many people had heard about that. But it was very interesting because he just wanted me to have all this real stuff, which I was terrified of because it wasn't fat-free in those days, right?
Yeah.
Real butter, real chicken, real this.
Yeah.
And what happened is when he made me journal, I realized that I would get a headache within 20 minutes every day after drinking the Diet Coke. That seems really obvious now. A lot of people don't drink Diet Coke who are trying to be more natural, but it didn't even occur to me that that could be driving the headache. So sometimes when we do these elimination diets, we then really realize, oh my God, this thing I'm having every day is hurting me, right? So,
absolutely, yeah.
And how do we do it? How do we do an elimination diet?
Yeah, and that's a very, the story is something I see time and time again. I really appreciate you sharing that because headaches are a very common one. Even food additives are like things like MSG can lead to headaches and migraines. So those are very common as well. So the best way to do it, there's actually, two basic ways to do it. One is to do it yourself by eliminating the most common food sensitivities, which really intersect with the most common food allergies as well, so the things we talked about. And then you avoid them for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then you reintroduce them in the purest form possible. So like we're going to avoid gluten. Gluten is wheat, barley, rye, spelt. So we're going to avoid all those, like things found in pasta and bread. And so we can still do gluten-free grains. And then after 2 weeks, you bring them in purest form, like so maybe 100% whole wheat bread, or maybe something like some type of high gluten cereal.
Yeah.
And then you see how you feel. But journaling is a really important part of that. And I found, so when I was in med school, we had to do this as part of our nutrition class.
Okay.
And so I found that, like, I had no idea gluten made me tired. I had no
Yes.
idea that dairy made me feel bloated. And, by really cutting those out and bringing them back in, you get a more personal experience with the foods, and I think that's a really nice way to go, and we can do that together.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, and that some people, i.e. my teenager, will say, I'm not going to stop eating pizza. Like, I just don't want, I want to be able to eat these foods. This sounds too difficult. You're left with nothing to eat. I know it's only 2 weeks, which makes it easier, but then do you have a way of being able to eat these foods again? Or when you find out you're sensitive, are you always sensitive?
That's such a great question. So a food allergy is different from a food sensitivity. And then there's a third category called food intolerance, is like lactose intolerance.
Okay.
We can talk about that some other time. But when you have a food sensitivity, it doesn't mean you're always going to be sensitive to it. So the current research on food sensitivities really shows it's probably related to inflammation, especially gut inflammation. And so healing the gut and healing the microbiome of the gut and removing the food can help heal your system enough, that immune system reaction, so that you can eat the food again. So it's not like an allergy where hopefully you grow out of it, but you might not. A food sensitivity is something that if you avoid it and you do the work in helping to heal the gut, start a better diet, maybe work with a naturopath to get on certain supplements to help heal the gut, probiotics per se, then you can heal that immune reaction and bring that food back in eventually, and you'll feel a lot better for it.
Okay, so one way, you actually have a program which I have done multiple times because it's just healthy to do this detox. If you watch Great Day Connecticut, Scott and I did it last time together, and he's not someone who really likes to watch everything he's eating. And he'll think of only things in terms of losing weight, which was his motivation to do it, and he did lose a bunch of weight, right?
Yeah.
So this is the idea of these detox programs. If you're struggling and you think, I just don't have energy, or I feel bloated, or my joints are aching, this detox might be the right thing for you. What does it look like when you do it in a doctor-guided way with you?
Right, so in a doctor-guided, so in our office at Artemis Wellness Center, this is like, I feel it's my most important clinical tool for nutrition is guiding people through personalized elimination diets. So, we can do ones that are just gluten or just dairy. And in the Mediterranean Detox program and the upcoming Heart Health program, because inflammation is a risk factor that's part of the pathology of all chronic diseases, that we will eliminate gluten, dairy, except for yogurt. So we're going to make it a little easier.
You can have, basically good, pure, plain Greek yogurt, because basically when I've done this, we're going to eliminate sugar, gluten, dairy, and then certain other allergenic things like peanuts, corn.
Exactly. Peanuts, corn, those are biggies too. Some people are sensitive to soy or citrus. We don't eliminate those in the program. I do, but when someone comes to see us at Artemis Wellness Center, we might go more strict and eliminate all of them, especially someone with autoimmune disorders. We have seen connections with that with food sensitivities. We might eliminate eggs as well, shellfish, which is another common one. So there's different variations. And so when, in working with a physician, a naturopathic physician or integrated practitioner, we can help to guide, okay, how strict do we need to be?
Yeah.
We can also do testing, which I find is helpful, but not as impactful from a behavioral standpoint. So we can also do food testing for that.
So let's talk about that, because I actually think when we've done some testing, and I did this with my son, I'll share another story about what happened to him, but with you actually we did this, but when you do the testing and you see it black and white, for me, like there's a red bar, this isn't good for you, it seemed easier than wondering, like maybe I am, maybe I'm not, because if you really want to eat that food and you don't know, having a test might help people.
That's true, yeah, and everyone's different, so this is where, the hallmark of naturopathic and integrative medicine is personalization.
Okay.
So, we can give some general recommendations like we're doing today, but personalizing it is really helpful, and the testing can really help with that as well. So there are some tests that we do.
What's a test that people could ask for, whether they go to you, or maybe are there any tests they can just get through their Quest lab, or they want to just a starting point?
So the problem is that if you go through the conventional lab testing, and I've seen this in my practice, where it's so much more expensive and you don't know how much it's going to cost at the end.
Oh, okay.
And so I like to save my patients money by really targeting labs and helping to hone in on what they really need. I wouldn't recommend a lab test unless it was going to make a difference in our clinical plan. And also I'd like to be full disclosure, so that's why we're out of network. So some of the specialty lab testing, they can range anywhere from $150 to $2,000. It depends on how much detail we need, but some of the basic ones, we'll do like a 96 food panel. Now the problem with that, Kara, and this is cutting edge. This is really, helping people to understand the cutting edge of food sensitivities and intolerances. Is it's growing. So more people are having food allergies. More people are having food sensitivities. That's pretty clear, and more people are having GI issues.
Yeah.
So there are like this second generation, let's say, of food sensitivity testing that we do in our office. Through Vibrant Wellness is one of the companies we use, but there's many companies where we'll look at the protein level. So when you're reacting to foods, it's at a protein level, and that it literally breaks it down into all the different components of that food. So it's not just like the outer shell, it's the protein, it's which part of that food, which part of that egg, which part of that milk, which milks, is it sheep, is it goats, is it cows? So we can get into a lot more detail with some of this like almost second generation food sensitivity testing we can do.
Okay, and this is something that if you're wondering about cost, you might be able to submit it to your insurance agency afterward, or if you have a flex spending account, a lot of times they can be covered. But if you're really wanting to know, like, why am I feeling sick and tired all the time? If you're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, a food sensitivity could be a problem.
It could be, and I do warn people against like just getting the ones online, because there are some online, and sometimes that's helpful, but it's really, they can also have false positives and false negatives. So one thing with testing, and this is why I love helping people walk through the free way of testing, which is through food.
Yeah.
Even though, like, if you want to see a test that shows this, that, and the other, it's a good guide, but it's not necessarily accurate. There's no test that's 100% accurate. So we can use a basic test, but if someone really wants to know what's happening, snapshot, real time, which can change. Some of the second generation protein testing I find is a lot more useful clinically.
Okay. So if you're wondering how do I do this, they would call the Artemis Wellness Center. It's artemiswellnesscenter.com or drartemis.com. We can find you that way. And people can do this, and you don't necessarily have to go to Milford. You would talk to them. You can do a telemedicine and then order the testing for them and guide them through. And the detox that's coming up is kind of for everybody?
Yeah, so definitely like info at Artemis Wellness Center is a great way to contact us via email. And we do virtual, telemedicine as well. So we have people all over the country that we speak to and help. And the upcoming detox program is kind of exciting. So I do these programs seasonally. It was so great to have you and Scott on. And
we did the winter one, so spring is coming, and this one's going to be heart health focused.
It will be heart health focused. And this is another thing, when we look at heart health, inflammation is that mediator of all chronic disease. And so food sensitivities, intolerances, allergies, it's something that a lot of people are missing, a lot of physicians are missing. And there's also another component that I just read an article, 2023 recently about it, American Heart Association article, and it is acknowledging that also heavy metals and toxins, which were, Earth Day being inundated by, is a really important piece of the puzzle. And that's why my programs include food sensitivities. We also look at toxins and how to minimize those.
So I have teenagers, and so getting them to give up any food is hard. And I have been lucky enough to know great doctors like you. So when Julian had a rash on his face, and he was probably 9, and it would not go away, and I'd taken him, who I love my pediatrician, but I'd taken him several times. We tried different ointments. Is it yeast? Is it this? Is it that? Nothing was really making it go away. So I talked to you, and you said, I bet you it's a food insensitivity. And we did a panel, and you said, do you know he's allergic to hazelnuts? Or sensitive, rather, I think is the word. And I said, no. And you're like, and peanuts a little bit too. But I'm like, no, he eats peanuts. He doesn't have anaphylactic shock. So again, sensitivity versus allergy. Long story short, he'd been eating Nutella, copious amounts in the summer, going to the ice cream bar and getting Nutella all the time. And so he was so upset, but you said just take out all the peanuts and the Nutella for at least 2 weeks and give him a lot of orange foods, carrots, vitamin A, all that. And it literally disappeared and didn't come back in like 3 or 4 days. So this can happen quickly, right? Okay. And I share that because that's just like a story of, why do we want to eliminate something we love like Nutella? Well, maybe it's driving your acne or your rash or your tiredness. And guess what? He does eat it now in little bits. I just warn him not to have a lot of it, but it hasn't come back, the rash.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Kara, because, with food sensitivities, you may be able to eat it up to 3 times a week. So one of the ways that research is showing it develops is when we have it all the time. Okay. And I know my daughter loves Nutella too, so like we have to limit, the copious amounts too sometimes.
Especially when they're putting lots of it on an ice cream, like hello.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. So it's like really about things that we eat the most of can show up on a food sensitivity panel too, especially if we have inflammation in the gut. So that's a really good point about eating too much of a food can develop into a food sensitivity as well.
So what about all the stuff that's coming out, especially if you're watching on your feeds with perimenopause, menopause, or anti-inflammatory diet, which you actually really wrote the book, The Anti-Inflammatory Diet for Dummies. You co-wrote this book. There's a lot out there that says, don't have any dairy ever, don't have any gluten ever. So, we have to give up all this if we want to be anti-inflammatory. Is that true?
It is not true, and this is again the hallmark of a really great integrative physician, and a physician in general is personalizing your plan. We're all different. We have different fingerprints. We have different nutrigenomics, genetics, so everyone's going to be different. And the things that affect us all are environment, looking at the toxins in the environment, inflammation, gut health. So we look at all these commonly, and these also affect our hormones. Okay. So, soy is not something that everyone's sensitive to, especially when you're looking at organic. I lost a lot of weight when I went to med school and replaced my dairy milk with soy milk. And
yeah, people say that you lose weight on dairy. That's true.
if you cut out dairy, because dairy, it's tricky because that's more of an intolerance. People with lactose intolerance, that's working on an enzyme level. So
why does it make us fat?
Because, it's because of inflammation. There it is, yeah. So inflammation is our body's natural reaction, and we need some inflammation to help our gut heal.
Yeah.
So inflammation isn't, an all bad thing. We need it for our immune system. That is the way that we heal, is through creating our inflammatory cells. The problem is that inflammation can go unchecked and grow like a wildfire.
Okay.
Like in mast cell disorders, which are tied into that food allergy issue with histamine, mast cells. But when we look at food sensitivities, we also can have an intolerance or sensitivity where a lot of people don't produce that lactose enzyme. And that's why the dairy that's fermented dairy is better for more people.
So just to break it down, the inflammation, we think of, I'm inflamed, my knee's gonna hurt. But it makes you fat because you're not digesting things as well, or like, why does something that irritates our gut make us heavier? Yeah,
so inflammation does make us gain, so the bloating.
Okay.
So when you look at when you have a food sensitivity, let's say, and you might feel a little bloated, or you might feel like a little achy or a mild headache. I've seen it tied into acne. I've seen it tied into attention issues. It's really so many things could be tied into a sensitivity. Mm-hmm. But what happens is that, that extra inflammation, it's almost like, when you get a cut and it gets red and it's healing, you see how it kind of pops up.
Yeah.
And our system, creates, the immune system really starts to work harder to help heal. So that also can make it harder for our enzymes to work. It can make it harder for all of the physiological processes that we have to work their best.
So let's just bust some myths. You don't always have to give up all gluten, although I know you've said this before. The reason why gluten's getting such a bad rap right now, the bread that we're eating today is not what our grandmother ate because of all the way wheat is raised nowadays.
It's true. Yeah, the protein has been modified to be higher in the gluten protein, and so not everyone is sensitive to gluten. Some people, especially if you're type A blood, can enjoy bread more likely than someone with type O.
Yeah, I'm type O, and basically everything says I shouldn't have it. And that when I used to have to go to sleep early for the morning show, I would know if I had a bowl of pasta, I'd fall asleep, but I guess that's why. So gluten makes me very tired.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just boil this down. People could come on to, I want to encourage you to go to artemiswellnesscenter.com. You can, or info@Artemis Wellness Center if you want to take an email. You can find a lot of information. And when is the program going to start?
So it's going to start the day after Mother's Day. So it's going to be right at that nice in-between time, right, between May 12th, Mother's Day, 13th to the 25th. So in between Mother's Day, we're actually going to do 14 days.
14 days.
Yeah, because I want to make it easy. And,
so 14 days.
I want everyone to enjoy their Memorial Day, so they're not worried about it.
and you come out of this, at least my experience, and Scott's experience, if you want to lose some weight, you often do lose weight. You said you've usually lost at least 5 pounds or so, but more than that, you might come out with some clarity of, okay, this really doesn't work for me, and then you can change the behavior. And maybe then you decide, after you're feeling better, to add some back in. You can kind of test it, and that's what you're going to do.
Right.
So what do you eat? People will say, oh my gosh, what am I going to eat for breakfast? Like, there's going to be nothing to eat. That was Scott's worry. So what do you eat when you do this elimination diet?
So there's a lot of things that don't contain gluten or dairy or sugar or corn or peanuts. And if we look at some of the foods that people from other parts of the world grew up on, whether it's like, Thai food or some of the delicious delicious, like even sushi. Like you look at some of these foods, or right now is Greek Orthodox fasting, where we have like more of a vegan diet for 40 days. Beans, rice, oatmeal is fine. Gluten-free oats. Oatmeal is great, and it also lowers cholesterol.
Okay.
And so we can have. We're going to include the yogurt. So because
Greek
it's
yogurt.
fermented, and a really important point about that is the lactose is fermented out in things like fermented dairy. That's why people with lactose intolerance tend to be able to have yogurt and even some cheeses, which we're not going to do cheese for the diet.
Right. But if you are going to add cheeses back in, sometimes just a little Parmesan or goat cheese or things like that we digest easier. Is that correct?
It depends. So sheep and goats.
Just for me.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
It's good to know what works for your body, and that can change too as well, which is really interesting. And so it's a journey.
Okay, so it can change. So we can go on and do this, but I guess I want to give people hope that doing an elimination diet doesn't have to be torture. There's no calorie restriction. You can eat as much as you want of said things. So you can have as many greens as you want. Even like if you're having a sweet tooth, I was allowed to have dark chocolate so long as it was 70% or above, right? So,
yes.
Because then there wouldn't be a lot of sugar in it. So you can put a little honey on the Greek yogurt, right? Just not the processed sugars.
Absolutely, yeah. You can have some delicious desserts. Like fresh fruit is a wonderful dessert too, like especially if we're doing seasonal fruit. So you could do, instead of peanut butter, if you're not allergic or sensitive to other nuts, we could do almond butter, we can do cashew butter, we could do sunflower butter, which is like, a seed, and that one's very safe. So
if you like toast and peanut butter in the morning, instead you might have some gluten-free seed bread and almond butter. So they're just swaps. You do get to eat, and the end of this journey might be that you realize there's a couple of things you need to eliminate that would make a huge difference in your life.
It's true, yeah. Those headaches, that bloating, those mild symptoms, that acne that was there, can go away if it's a sensitivity, and it's pretty dramatic. And
I did notice that when I did this in my 20s, I was breaking out more then, and I thought it was always the makeup and this, but like during that elimination diet, I couldn't believe how everything just cleared. So that was also, I think when you experience something like this, that's when you're like, oh, I can make a change. Not that it's not hard, because I love food, everyone loves food, but you can really see some significant payoffs in quality of life.
Absolutely, and we're doing it together. So even though it might seem hard, it's much easier when we're doing it, you're doing it in a group. And I have a whole menu plan, where it's interactive.
You can eat out if you need to, right?
Absolutely.
You just make some substitutions, like going out and getting salad, and we try to eat organic when we can, but if you happen to be out, you would rather us get a big salad with some chicken on it than not eat.
Absolutely, yeah. We don't want those cravings to get out of hand, so we're good.
We only have 90 seconds left, but let me just talk about oils. A lot of the oils can be really inflammatory, so I leave you with this. Olive oil is always your pick. Just put olive oil on things, cook with olive oil. Olive oil can be a great way to be an anti-inflammatory oil.
Yes, extra virgin olive oil is the only oil that has been scientifically proven to help with insulin resistance, with lowering blood pressure, even helping with dementia, Alzheimer's at a higher dose. And so it is the go-to oil, and it's part of the Mediterranean diet.
Okay, so I'm going to drive everyone again. You can go to the ArtemisWellnessCenter.com. This book, I think, might still be available, yes, on Amazon, Anti-Inflammatory Diet for Dummies, if you want to start there. I think it's always good to do it in a group, so check it out, because when I do these with you seasonally, I always feel like it's not that hard because everybody's doing it. Yes. So it's a great way to just learn more about yourself. If anyone figures out how they can get their teens motivated to do this kind of stuff, let me know. But
maybe that'll be the next program.
The teens will be like, can I still have Chick-fil-A on this diet? All right, so all the information is right there for you. Thank you for being here for CURES. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.